Hi, my name is Paul Sutliff. I've been a Christian for 40 years. Never been more scared in my life. I thought I was going to die. And had a choice. Am I dying or, am I ready to beat my maker? And decided for Christ right then. Before I became a Christian, I grew up with my family who they took me to church every Sunday. We were involved in church a couple times a week doing different things. Hi, my name is Paul Sutliff. I've been a Christian for 40 years. I became a Christian as I had a vision sitting down in front of a picture of Jesus and on a church youth retreat. And I'd made a decision before then that I was going to go join everybody else in that free sex movement. And that's not how it went. I had this vision of heaven and never been more scared in my life. I think it was actually 16 when that happened. Never been more scared in my life. I thought I was going to die. And had a choice. Am I dying or, am I ready to beat my maker? And decided for Christ right then. My role is a couple of different things. One is I'm a teacher. That's the main thing. And most of everything that I do has to do with teaching. I do missionary type work towards Muslims by sharing Christ and working on what they actually believed and sharing that with other Christians as well. My goal is to build up Christians so they can reach Muslims for Christ. That's one of them. And then the other thing I do is I teach apologetics, trying to get people to understand what other people believe and to understand the right ways to share the gospel. There are some times that being nice doesn't work. There are some times that you have to understand the culture of things, and it's kind of shocking. I always thought you had to share kindly and have a smile and all this, but there's a little bit more involved in that, in sharing the gospel. So I guess that's where I am. I also do a lot with getting news out and trying to stay informed. So I won't say I'm a jack of all trades. I love to sing. God uses me in whatever way He wants. That's my best way to put it. Before I became a Christian, I grew up with my family who they took me to church every Sunday. We were involved in church a couple times a week doing different things. Church was only once a week, but we were going and we were taking part in choir, we were taking part in youth group, we were doing all sorts of things. And even one of them was actually rebuilding an organ. My father was a music teacher and my mother was a substitute teacher. So I grew up in a loving family, taught me a lot about love. And that's what actually made it so hard for me to learn about Islam. But I had a good life. And I can't say anything negative about it. I had whole summers off. Can you imagine that? Yeah. That's kind of an interesting question. As far as anybody introducing the gospel to me, never heard it. I grew up in a traditional church. No one ever talked about being born again. No one once told me about the power of Jesus' blood, and I remember being angry when I finally figured that out. Like, why did nobody tell me? I was so mad. There was so many things I had never thought of. No one told us to read the Bible in respect. We were kind of hinted that we should. No one told us there was importance in that. That kind of blows my mind when I think back on it. Here we have somebody going to church every day and nobody thought and had no concept that was important. And not one person shared. We prayed, we did all sorts of things, but no one talked about becoming a Christian. I would say the statistic would be pretty low. Before I became a Christian, I grew up with my family who, they took me to church every Sunday. We were involved in church a couple times a week doing different things, Christian, and that I'm out there doing some evangelism. As you can find in the books and the things that I'm doing right now, I would say that statistic is highly accurate. One of the things, I was out with Julio and we were talking to two young men on the beach, and we talked about the importance of sharing the gospel. And originally there was three men we were talking to, and then they all looked to this one individual who shared the gospel. And that was kind of sad when we thought about it, because we even talked to them about what happens when you don't. I mean, all those people who don't get to hear because one of you keeps silent. That's a sad, sorry truth. The one thing I think that stops people from sharing the gospel is, number one, not knowing the Word of God. The second one is, I would say, it's beyond knowing the gospel. You have to hold it in your heart. And there's something important about, reading the Word of God and thinking on it. And when you do that, it becomes part of you. When you share the gospel, I think there's also the other aspect where there are people who say, oh my gosh, you're one of those. And yeah, I am one of those. I will tell you the truth. I have people who are upset about hearing the truth. I'm not here to make you feel good. Jesus isn't here to make you feel good. You know what? Jesus is here to give you the truth. I don't care about your feelings, which sounds pretty mean. I don't. My goal is to share the gospel, to share the truth. And if your feelings get hurt, that's okay. And I think that's if there's any one thing I think that keeps people, is they're worried about hurting someone's feeling or being called out as not being correct politically or socially correct. Stop caring about the feelings. Start getting the truth out is how I feel about that.